Hello, this is Brian Rowe going over some chess problems at chess.com. I'm trying to do at least 5 chess tactics every day and preferably 25. I recorded this video in real time and it was done without any audio, so I was trying to give people an idea into what I was thinking. I'm going over this at 400 speed, so instead of being an hour and a half, it's only 24 minutes, and I'm going to try to give you guys commentary on what I was thinking during each of these problems. I used to be up around 2200 for chess.com's tactical trainer when I was playing super actively. I'm now down around 1900. I was down around 1600 when things dropped. But let's look at the first problem here. In looking at every single problem, I try to figure out what's going on material-wise, which material's pretty even here. Black has some pieces threatening his opponent's king, and white is a little bit ahead in development. Now we start calculating. Queen f2 is the first thing we look at because this knight has the opportunity to jump into f2 at some point, and we figure out that we're winning a rook there. Not too bad problem originally, a little bit slow on time getting there, but in the tactical trainer, time is not really an issue as long as you don't spend more than 5 minutes. This problem, white is just getting crushed, so we're looking for a lot of material won or a checkmate, and that's what we find here is a weakened back rank, and that bishop on a3 is causing black some huge problems. As we jump through here, it's really important also to realize that there was a back rank possible threat against white. Moving on to number 3 here, this is a tougher problem. White once again is crushing black with regards to material, but black is crushing white with regards to developed pieces. We've just got to do a bunch of calculation here and figure out if there's a way to actually win. And I do these problems by calculating everything I possibly can from the beginning before moving any pieces, even if I've figured out what I think is the right first move, because outside of the tactical trainer, you're not going to know that there's an actual tactic there, so you don't want to jump into a tactic halfway through. The undefended rook on h1 is one of the more important pieces to look at here. Additionally, the fact that black has 3 pieces aiming at their opponent's king is extremely important here, so there should be enough material to hopefully find a mate in this situation. This was one of the tougher problems that I ran into. I actually eventually hit the 5-minute mark on it and made what I thought was the best move in the situation to move forward, but I didn't find the mate entirely until I got partway through the calculation here. And what I was missing really was the knight check at the end here, the fact that the knight takes on c2 and finishes the mate. Very beautiful mate there. This particular problem was also very nice. We've got basically even material here. The knight has the ability to grab the bishop and then make some really cool threats along the a1 h8 diagonal. If the knight moves off of the diagonal to grab the pawn, you're able to win the rook that is directly behind. A solid problem here. It took me a little bit longer than it should have, but eventually came to the right solution. Off to a really nice start here. This problem caused me a little bit of stress because I went for the rook sack right away and looked seriously to see if there is an opportunity to mate. And I always check the checks, then captures, then forcing moves, and it actually was a third category there, a forcing move that was the correct move. After exploring the checks, though, found the right move here, and it's based on an underdefended piece, which is that bishop on d5. There's an opportunity to threaten the bishop on d5 while simultaneously threatening mate. Material here is pretty even. White is down a pawn. Winning an entire piece is going to give you a winning position here. Take a second, see if you can see a way to capitalize on this. As you can see, this was a tough problem for me because I calculated out everything else that I could until I got to that threatening move. This one is another interesting one, particularly because there is the opportunity to play e6 at some point, drawing the king into the center and possibly bringing white's pieces into the attack. Additionally, white's got a running pawn there on A that could queen. The material situation looks to be a little bit in black's favor, but that pawn is so powerful that I actually wouldn't want to exchange everything off. Instead, I'm looking for mating opportunities that are available. White's army has really abandoned their monarch to the edge of the board, and black has the opportunity to capitalize on that. We find the right move here and follow it up with an attack. Still got to double check our calculations. Each move during a tactic, even if you believe you're right all the way through, if you've got time on the clock, you should definitely check all of your calculations. The worst thing to have happen is to have made a mistake partway through there that you could have caught and fixed because you were moving too quickly. Ooh, this problem caused me a little bit of trouble. I missed a threat that was involved. So looking at it, material situation is looking pretty even. White has a little more stable king, it looks like, but the king is actually less stable. The open H file is a huge advantage to black, threatening nice threats against H2 if we can block off F2. And the first place to start calculating here is the checks, which is where I went. Bishop to C5 starts things perfectly. Next thing to look at, though, is how do you follow up in this situation? And I followed up with a threatening move, which was incorrect. Instead, I should have been throwing the bishop down there to threaten the queen and also threaten mate. So I have to go back through and calculate this, look at the analysis, and this is one of the important things about chess.com is make sure that you figure out the right answer after any problems that you've missed, or even ones that you've gotten right, make sure you fully understand it. The material situation here is rather even, and there is a lot of things to calculate because the black king is sitting in the middle of the board and the white king is potentially in danger also. I spent a lot of time on this problem, a little bit more, once again, than I should have. The key element, though, is the piece that is sitting there on F5. That knight can just be taken right away. And you need to calculate whether your king is safe after that, which it looks very dangerous with the D and the F file rooks and the ability to swing the queen into action. The important part, though, is that that pawn actually controls E4. This is another solid problem. There's a lot of hanging pieces, very, very tense situation here. And the key in this particular problem is finding a way to bring all of your pieces together while making threats. The other thing is that this involves a knight move, and practicing your knight moves on an occasional basis with some knight drills will help you find these. As you noticed, it hit the bishop and the king there in that last one. This is a king pawn endgame, and most king pawn endgames like this, you can actually calculate out and find the right answer. There are some key elements that you really need to be aware of that make it easier to calculate things. One of them is called the square. It's being within a certain number of squares of the pawn, and I'll cover that in a much more in-depth video another time, but there's a lot of calculation here, and white's king is able to grab that runner, but the important part here is that black can swing back and create his own passed pawn after grabbing the white passed pawn. These two passed pawns are really the key to this particular problem. Once again, looking at the analysis here, there just isn't any way for white to stop that black passed pawn. Oh, this is a great problem. It is a situation in where white is getting crushed way down materially and is looking for opportunities to win that queen or to create a draw. We've got a discovered attack that is actually a double attack. It allows the black king to get hit by both the knight and the rook. And there are two options here, which is f3 and f5. And calculating between them is extremely important because you need the opportunity to, in some cases, fork the queen, or in other situations to make additional threats on the king that are going to allow you to force the queen to be exchanged. The last thing that's important here is this bishop and the opportunity for the bishop to be brought in potentially stalemate situations. So we've got the major factors there. I'm spending a lot of time on this one. This is 400%, so 4 times speed. There's a lot of calculations going on in this situation. And I eventually find that taking the knight up to f5 allows you to threaten some other forks in this situation. And then finally, it allows the knight to come back to e3 to threaten a taking of the queen after you have attacked the queen and the king. And the bishop takes away the last escape square on d2 from the white king, ending in a draw. This is a situation in which I missed a check. The knight here has just come in and made some threats, but we've got an undefended piece over here on h6, and I identify the undefended piece very quickly. I also look at the queen that seems a little bit out of place, but see there's no way to trap the queen. And I look for an opportunity to go after this bishop, and I simply play f4 with the idea of trapping the bishop. There's a much stronger move in this situation, and I miss this problem because I miss the fact that taking the bishop on h6 comes with check because of the position of the king. So making sure to calculate the checks is the essential piece of this particular puzzle and the takeaway I need from it. So I missed it. The correct answer is now there, and I run through the correct answer again, making sure that I've got it down. In this situation, white is actually up 2 pawns and has the opportunity to go after that undefended bishop by pinning the bishop. And the difficult part is figuring out where to move the king once threats are made. And I'm looking at the square h5 there and h4 in particular, and I'm calculating what happens if I move the rook over to e1 and then his rook moves to g7, and which of those two squares I have to go to. I initially believe that it is h5, but I need to make a concrete analysis here. And the big difference between the two is that h4 allows the rook to move up to f4 with check defending the bishop, where h5 does not allow that to happen and is a much, much stronger play here, winning a piece. The rook take here comes with check, which allows the bishop to come back and defend. This problem is one of the easier problems here, even though it is a longer string of moves, because black is threatening mate right away on g2. That battery of the bishop and queen working together is a huge threat. So I know that I'm going for mate, or I'm losing here, or I've got to win the queen, and I don't see any way to win the queen. So the first calculation is queen down, we grab the knight, and we find this nice little mating combination. In this next problem, this deals with pins. There's a lot of pins going on here, a lot of threats going on. I look at this problem for a significant period of time and miss an important piece of it, which is that the rook is pinned and cannot move to e1. In several different iterations, I keep thinking that bishop takes a8 allows for rook e1 mate, which is simply false here. Noticing the pin would have quickly allowed me to take the queen on a8 and walk away with a very strong position. Right now, just exchanging the bishop or winning a minor piece and letting that trapped queen out actually leaves you in a terrible position against white because you've got 2 minor pieces versus 2 rooks. I spent a lot of time on this one and failed to find the right answer. Oh, for a tip for chess.com, when dealing with situations like this in their tactical trainer, don't spend over 5 minutes, which I might have done on that particular problem, and always go back and make sure you fully understand the tactic. This is a very, very common tactic, especially when running into new players. The black side has overextended. There's an opportunity for a check and some great threats going on. You just have to calculate out which order in which to take the pieces. Here, once again, we've got a solid tactical problem, and I noticed that the knight is able to come in and make some threats and calculate with the knight, but what you really should be doing first is calculating checks with your most powerful pieces. There's an undefended rook sitting over there on g1, but better than that, your opponent's king is sitting there trapped, and it's a simple mate in 2. This situation is rather interesting in that you've got a lot of pieces aimed at your opponent's king, and you have a knight over there that is potentially under defended. I spend some time calculating this and eventually come to the right conclusion that you're at least winning an exchange by making a threat on that knight, adding an extra attacker here. After the first move, take time to recalculate and then go directly to win the knight, or if his rook comes up to defend, end up in a winning situation by exchanging your knight for his rook. Here in this situation, this is another king pawn endgame, and you can calculate it out all the way. You are clearly losing as white, and you're going for a draw. This is a well-known draw. I wish the puzzle would go a little bit further and show the complete execution of the draw, but that's for another video another time. We've got another situation here where this piece has ended up trapped. All of the squares that it can go to are attacked. The right exchange of pieces here allows you to win the trapped piece. This particular problem is a wonderful trap set by white. If you grab the bishop right away, you need to find a way to deal with the running pawn. It's a matter of just calculating out how to stop that running pawn. Initially, I think that taking the bishop is entirely lost, but then I notice the maneuver that brings the rook over to f4 to stop the runner and leave us with an winning endgame. In this situation, we've got a pin here and a lot of loose pieces. I make some mistakes in the calculation here. I would pause this and try to figure out if you can find the right answer here. I find one of the moves, but not the second one. And that is essential, is following tactics all the way through. I miss that the bishop back there ends up undefended after the series of exchanges. In this situation, once again, you've got opposite colored bishops. There should be some great mating opportunities there. It's basically that the 2 bishops are living in opposite planes. They can't interact with each other, and whoever's on the attack has the better opportunity to make some winning threats. The king position there is also stuck on the back rank, and those rooks are so much better placed for black. So we have to find the correct combination to get to a checkmate. I make a minor error here and miss the mate. The mate is actually right there, allowing you to cover both the second and the back rank. This is a very dynamically interesting position because white has his opponent's rook just really hemmed in there in the corner and some opportunities to advance those pawns. The scope on white's pieces is also greatly enhanced if you can exchange off some of those central pawns. Calculation here is essential, and I made a minor mistake in calculation. I saw the right idea, and I missed a rook being able to move all the way to f1, creating a check and winning my queen partway through this calculation. Hit the right idea, but didn't end up with the exact right execution on it. Tactics are very unforgiving. One minor little misstep in them, and you go from winning to losing instantaneously. Which is why if you ever see that you're losing to a tactic, make your opponent prove it. Make them show you that they've found every single right move. They can easily make a mistake, as I did here. I pull back to d4 when I should be moving to d5, allowing a threat to d7. I go through the analysis here and check everything out to make sure that I'm in good shape and that I fully understand this. It's important not just to see the answer, but to actually learn the answer so that you can avoid those problems next time. This is a very tricky problem. White is trying to win here by advancing those pawns and is willing to give up material to remove the defender from positions where they can stop the pawn. So we just had the first offer of a free bishop, and we're moving up to the second offer of a free bishop in advancing these pawns. It really shows how important it is to take a look at the advancement of pawns and calculate how much it's worth to actually advance those pawns. You can give up a piece or two in your tactics in order to get a pawn to the other side and end up way ahead in a position. I'm taking a minute here to look at the options that come in after the bishop is moved forward to c6, that is. And now there's two options. One is to take and one is to move forward. Many players automatically take, but it is in that situation moving forward was the key. I hope you guys found some interesting things out of this. It has been Brian Rowe doing a quick review of 25 chess problems from chess.com.